folks, welcome back to my channel, and for this video I'm going to be reviewing another Scottish novel. And the novel I'm going to be looking at this time is Run by Jackie McLean. So this is the third book in the Donna Davenport Mysteries, and I have checked online, I have checked on Amazon, and there doesn't seem to be any other books in this series to have come out yet. So at the moment it stands at Toxic, Shadows and Run. So it's the third and most recent of the books, obviously. And I will get to talk about this in just a second. A bit of housekeeping first. If you're enjoying my channel, if you're enjoying my videos, if you can click on the subscribe button, click on that notification bell, leave some likes, leave some comments, it's always really appreciated. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I will post a link to the channel's ko-fi.com page in the description bar below and in the pinned comment in the comments section. So with that out of the road, back onto the main topic of this video. So it's going to be a wee look at Run, which, as I was saying, is part of the Donna Davenport Mysteries. So it does very much follow directly on from the events of get myself mixed up there. Yeah, it does follow directly on from the events of Shadows. Because between Toxic and Shadows, I think there's about an 18-month gap in stories. There's like about 18 months from the end of Toxic to start Shadows. But Run picks up more or less right after Shadows finishes. And so everything's still on the run. The police up in Arbroath know that he's been in the area. He's been spotted, he's been seen by Donna Davenport. She's tried to chase him down, but he still managed to get away. And the book itself does start with a newspaper report, which does very much try and paint the Police Scotland in a very negative light of like, oh, why is everything still on the run? Why hasn't it been caught yet? Why is this threat to the general public still left at large? So it very much does highlight the fact that there is a start of a shift in the relationship between the police and the local press, that they are very much demanding to know why anything hasn't been, why things haven't been done, which very much does highlight the fact that in a lot of these big cases, the press aren't told everything, so they tend to jump to conclusions on the little that they do know, which can essentially stir things up and kind of agitate the situation, and but it sometimes make things worse. So that again could be seen very much with the stress and the strain that is seen amongst Davenport and our colleagues, and how that very much affects the relationships between them all, and the relationship between them and the press, which does again very much have a negative effect on how the police and the case are all presented to the public. But then again, that is very much something that does play into the end of the book and the tactics that are used in order to essentially bring this whole saga to a close. But I will talk about the end in a bit more detail later on, because even though it does end with a very decisive note, I still got the impression that there was a but in there somewhere, and I was just something about the end that very much set my spidey sense tingling. But again, everything is very much set up as being this existential threat again. He's very much seen as being like is it 2 or 3 steps ahead of them. Like, for somehow he always seems to know what they're going to do next, how they're going to do it. He's able to get hold of Donna without her realising how he's doing it, and it very much does end in tragedy for Donna and the whole team. But then again, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give away too much of the story itself, but everything very much does have a hand in tragic events that do befall part of Donna and her team. And it's only after that that Donna actually discovers how everything's been putting all this into place. And it does very much highlight the vulnerability of modern technology and how that can all be used against us. And it does very much kind of play into a paranoia that a lot of people have about modern technology, because she realises that with everybody now having smartphones, and with all of them bringing their smartphones into the office where they're discussing all their plans in order to get to everything's actually been able to use malware in order to hack their phones. And that is how he's been able to spy on them and get all the information he needs. Like, he doesn't have to do what he did in Shadows, where he has to be as close to them as he was. He can now spy on them from a distance and still get all the information that he needs or wants, because they're all giving it to him without even realising. And that does see Davenport going out and getting kind of more like old-fashioned phones, like more kind of the flip phone style ones that were kind of like out, about 20 years ago. And that almost gave me an impression, or it did kind of give me an impression of Donna realising that she has to maybe rely on a more old-fashioned style of policing in order to actually get to everything and actually get them and essentially deal with them as a threat. And I was kind of wondering how in real life, if that would have actually worked, if it is that easy to actually be able to hack somebody's phone or hack multiple phones at the one time in order to spy on people. Again, might not be easy kind of like for me, but I do wonder if maybe if you have access to the right technology or the right malware or whatever, yeah, it was something that did kind of make me think. And it does very much kind of cut everything off. And again, with him being someone who is presented as being unstable for quite a lot of the series, when he realises what's happened, that he's been cut off from all this information, he's been cut off from his ability to actually get the information he needs to be able to spy on his former colleagues, essentially. He finds it very disorientating. He finds it very it's almost as if he's been cut off from the web that he's been at the centre at all this time, and he essentially has to rely on what little information he can get from the press, which is where how Donna and her team are presenting themselves to the press come in really handy, because again, they've been clever. It's like once they've realised about the phones, this is when their relationship with the press becomes very important, and they play on this because they know that everything that will now be watching them through the local rags, through the local papers, and through the local news on the TV. And it does make it as if he starts making mistakes, because again, he's disorientated. He starts to become more desperate to get the information that he knows that he needs, which is when it does become easier, because again, he's off guard. He knows that something's going to happen. He knows something's coming, but he doesn't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know how it's going to happen, and they use that to mislead him. And I do think the fact that throughout this entire book, throughout the whole of Shadows, everything's hiding out, and he's got a local criminal and a local criminal's daughter being held hostage in a isolated cottage out in the Scottish countryside. think it's out towards Melrose. Not Melrose, Montrose. Melrose is a totally different part of the country. It's in the countryside out towards Montrose, so very much symbolic of him being isolated and surrounded by people he doesn't trust. And surrounded by people who probably would want to do him some serious damage. And it's like, I'm just trying to read my notes here. And the final confrontation between Davenport and Everton does appear very final. Like when you're reading through it, it does become it does have that air of, you know, that either one of them's going to die, or one of them has to die in order for this whole thing to end. But I did get the impression that even though there is a very definite end to how it's presented, and again, I don't want to give too much away, I still felt as if it wasn't as it all appears. That it just felt as if there was something more going on in the background, behind the scenes, that we as readers are not privy to. And I did feel that possibly kind of leaves things open in the future for however Jackie wants to take the series. And I know that I've mentioned previously that I felt there were parallels between the Donna Davenport stories and the Sherlock Holmes stories, especially with Everton being a kind of Moriarty figure. And I do think those parallels are continued and run. And I do wonder how it's going to be paralleled later on in the series if and when Jackie brings out more Donna Davenport stories. And is there the whole issue of Donna Davenport wanting to quit, which is something that is brought up at pretty much all three of the books. She still has doubts, she still has these feelings of like wanting to quit, wanting to get away, wanting to protect Libby and essentially be somewhere safe. Yeah, that is not addressed, or it's not resolved in Ron, which again very much leaves that open, that it could be another issue, it could be an issue to get brought back up and develop further in further books, and again could be another plot point or character point for future novels. And as I was saying earlier on as well, there is currently only 3 books in the series, in the Donna Davenport stories. So Toxic, Shadows and Run. And again, with how Run has been left, how it's been, with how the novels ended, I can see there being different ways that the series could be taken, could be developed, could be run with, excuse the pun. And yeah, so that it was definitely a novel that I enjoyed. Again, with Toxic and Shadows, the chapters are fairly short, to the point, they're not dragged out, and yeah, it very much does. It does very much add to the pace and speed of the novel itself. So again, if you are looking for more Scottish crime fiction to read, maybe something that you haven't read before or come across before, I would definitely recommend getting yourself copies of the Donna Davenport mysteries and reading all 3 books that are out just now. Hopefully when more of these books come out, I will review them and upload the videos. But definitely a collection of Scottish crime novels that I would recommend to anybody who enjoys Scottish crime. So hopefully you will all have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you will be intrigued by the Donna Davenport series, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.